Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of the Ethnically podcast. Delighted to have Maria Semple as our guest today. Maria, would you like to say hello to everyone?
I'd love to. So it's evening here in Australia, and hello to all of you from around the world. And thank you, Adarsh, for having me.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is my first episode of filming with someone from a different part of the world, let alone Australia, which is the other side of the world, which is pretty incredible. I've just woken up. Maria's had a very, very long day. Um, so yeah, just a little bit about Maria as a bit of an introduction. She's a professional coach, mentor, and founder of New Life Coach, and is also the author of a book, Everyday Stories from 10 Remarkable Women. So she focuses on women empowerment from women from all different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, cultural different experiences. She also has an educational background. She's got a master's practitioner as a coach, and she's also worked in state government, non-profit organizations, and the private sector. So we've got someone who's really established in the coaching world, looking to empower women from all different backgrounds. So yeah, Maria, like I said, it's absolutely amazing to have you on the podcast. Just before we get into all the nitty gritty and the questions, right? How have you found sort of? I've been asking everyone this as we approach the end of 2024. What's been like your biggest highlight so far? I know we still got a few months left, but how are you finding the end of the year?
Whew. Well, I am finding 2024 has been great to me because so I would say that in 2022, I made a very ballsy decision to not go back to work after the pandemic, and we were just getting outside the pandemic issues that we had here. And Melbourne was one of the most locked down cities around the world. Uh, and therefore, there were several then problems that arose from that. So in 2023, I was traveling in a camper van for most of the year, actually, and I went to Queensland, which is the subtropical part of us here in Australia. So I was in a warm climate, wearing shorts every day, and walking along the beach, to then the opportunity to come back to Melbourne and develop the coaching program and the structure that I created for this specific program. So it's been a year of feeling myself empowered, walking my talk, being of growth, feeling congruent, feeling that, when you have a vision of yourself, but that you can bring it to fruition. This has been 2024 for me, and getting more connections, listening to podcasts, and that's how I found you, and reaching out to others saying, hey, if you're looking for guests, I love what you're doing and your work. So it's a win-win situation. So it's been amazing. It's been amazing working with some women as well, collaborating, and feeling on top of the world.
Oh, that's amazing. No, that's brilliant. Great to hear a lot of positives and to hear that you sort of use this year as a year of growth and sort of development. And I think it's important, like whenever I think about the end of the year, right, looking at the biggest successes and things that you can look back on and say, like, look, this is something that I'm really proud of. And it's amazing to hear about what you've done this year with your coaching business, which we'll get a lot more into in today's episode. I also wanted to touch on before we get into your career experiences and why you set up the coaching business, New Life Coaching, what could you tell the audience a little bit about your background, your heritage, and obviously being from Australia, your family background, like just a bit about how you managed to get to Australia. Like it's really because I remember you telling me it's quite an interesting story.
Yes, so I was born in Venezuela. And so I always say to people that I am Latina in my DNA, but I've been in Australia for 37 years. So I live here much longer than I ever lived in my country of origin. So I can mix English very well with Spanish, which we all call Spanglish. And so if somebody wants to speak to me in Spanish, I am able, obviously being kind of like my mother tongue, but I will soon ask them to excuse me and I revert to English, which is very funny, even though I was not born here. And I came here because I was remarrying in the late 1980s, and I had two children of my own from a previous marriage, and so I came all of a sudden to start a new life here in Australia, and that was a very exciting time in my life, but also that it brought um, the the changes that you face of new cultures, new different nationalities, and Australia, Melbourne in particular, is a very multicultural city. So for the first time, from this young woman being only from Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela, and living surrounded by Venezuelans, true and true, to come and see and make friends with people from different parts of the world. That was really a very exciting experience, and that I didn't have any preconceived notions
Mhm.
of who and why, but you treat people with same love and respect and enthusiasm as you will treat your own friends, and that's what I did.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to sort of the experiences of a lot of sort of migrants that have moved from, say, whether it's Venezuela or Asian countries or African countries to the so-called Western countries as well. Because I mean, my parents can definitely resonate to that experience of like coming to a new city, coming to London, multicultural city, like Melbourne is multicultural for in Australia. And yeah, so having to make friends, learn a new culture, understand the diversity, but also bring what they bring. So like their character, their presence, and I guess that's very similar to what you've done from Venezuela to Melbourne in Australia. Um, it's really like I find it fascinating that like your culture and how you've sort of because you do speak you did we did speak about it offline as well around how a lot of what you've been brought up with influences your coaching business, and it'll be great to get into that now. So could you tell us a bit more about your journey from building this your successful coaching business and how you focus on empowering women?
Sure. So I was saying that the journey didn't start there, but so as I mentioned, I came here, I remarried, and
Mhm.
life was supposed to be all rosy and stable, but I think life had a different plan. And so a few years later, my marriage ended, and it brought a lot of changes once again. And I guess I was going to be destined, according to the opinions of other people, destined to be a poor, divorcee woman, a single mom. But all of a sudden, I started creating or recreating ceramics that had a flair for the ceramics that are created in Venezuela. And I just didn't really know how to build pottery, but I went to learn the basics skills. And all of a sudden, I had a business that when going through markets and putting myself out there, selling all this pottery and going to trade fairs and exhibition, and all of a sudden I created a small business. And my children were involved. I also employ some women that, for some different reasons, were not able to integrate into the workforce at the time, and they had language barriers. That was the most common problem. And so I all of a sudden was filled with prosperity and excitement. And that was something totally that came out of the blue. And I guess that I found my own strength to persevere, to be determined. And that also brought me to create the coaching many years later. But I think like when you go through changes and you have this innate entrepreneurial flair within you. And in my country of origin, Venezuela, I possibly saw little craft and things that you make, but I really didn't think that it was going to be possible to do it here in a formal way. But it just creating something from nothing was a delight to me. But I would say that yes, again, emphasizing that was because I applied determination, courage, and yes, just taking action completely. So
Mhm.
from that to I had a vision of myself when I was a child to be a mentor or a teacher of some sort because in the 1960s they didn't call it coaching, so I was able to then to think over the years, to think back into that vision that I have of myself. I went to I closed the business for different reasons, and I went to work as you mentioned in the intro, for several organizations that included government, local government, and non for profit and private enterprise, but I work in a contracting position, meaning that I had a short term role. And so when these roles happened, Adash, you don't have sometimes the benefits that permanent employees have, and therefore, you have to craft your own path of your own career. And so women in contract, they don't have performance reviews, appraisals, etc. So I have to craft my own professional path. And I went to study. I went to study business. I went to study event management as well and tourism. Before that, I went to study master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming. And all that it was because I had that vision of being that mentor, that teacher of some sort. And therefore, the first instinct was to establish a practice and then start helping others. And that was in between 2011 to 2012 to 2014. And then I went back to work full time as well, as a combining the practice and making some changes along the way. So that I wouldn't call it that success came immediately, but
Mm.
certainly is about taking action, surrounding yourself with other mentors and coaches, and establishing clear objectives for what you want to create that will help you. Then, okay, if I do this, then it will take me to this other step. And this is what I've been doing. Now help
Yeah, no,
others.
it's important to that you emphasize that the journey to being successful isn't just a straight line. It's gonna come in all shapes and sizes, and there's gonna be barriers along the way. I find it fascinating how you sort of embarked on that journey and sort of, you noticed sort of the systemic issue of women not getting those opportunities, and you sought to get yourself those opportunities and go into education, build your own business, that sort of thing. And I think it's really powerful to hear that because a lot of people can kind of just accept how things are, but I feel like you've got that drive and determination to want to change things. Um, Very similar to like what I'm want to do with ethnically. Like I've noticed that this is a huge gap and a huge problem in society in terms of diversity and inclusion and representation. And that's what I'm aiming to do. You with your coaching business, it's empowering women from diverse backgrounds. You did kind of mention it in your answer just then, but what kind of made you specifically focus on women from diverse backgrounds? You mentioned obviously not having the same opportunities as other people, but why is this a particular area of passion for you specifically?
Well, look, it is it is an interesting question, and I feel that your pain is related to your purpose. This is what it said, and I feel that because of my experience and as a migrant to Australia, and even though I've wouldn't really declare that I suffer any sort of discrimination, but I had some struggles to find work and find what people call permanent jobs. So it was kind of like the evolution of that to find all my strength into helping women from different cultural or diverse backgrounds and without discriminating where do they come from. However, it's important to understand that person is coachable and that they are ready to step into that new um, view of themselves rather than viewing their lives as if uh, it was done to them. You know what I mean? So done
Yeah,
to them,
that does make
meaning that they were more a victim rather than they can be the creator. So I and once again, Australia and Melbourne here is a multicultural society or community everywhere. So it is important not to focus only on South Americans because then, okay, then I won't learn. I won't be
yeah,
learning
very true.
more to that other nationalities or cultures, cultural backgrounds will offer me as a woman and coach. But the most important that there is a process to be future focused and regardless of their ethnicity, then they have to make that promise to themselves that they want to that they see a gap from where they are to where they want to be and trust that together in the partnership she can get there. And so that is possibly why it excited me to focus on this cohort of women because my purpose is related to my pain. And I feel that, okay, I can understand it fully and understand their pain fully as well.
I guess that's what makes a great coach as well, like being able to understand people's pain and sort of change that pain that people have into their purpose. Because that's definitely something that I think I've taken on board and I've taken on board since starting ethnically. But I feel like if you're going to empower someone, yeah, turn their pain into their purpose. And I guess that's a really, really powerful message that you kind of already bestowed on everyone today. I do think as well with learning from women of different backgrounds and that cultural experience that sort of enriches you. You learn so much as well as a coach and as someone who's sort of trying to influence them as well, I guess. Um, what would you say that's kind of what's been the biggest learning from doing like working with women, empowering women?
Well, I wouldn't call it in terms of influencing them as such.
Mm. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, then coaching is a partnership between the client and the coach to access the person's resources. Um, and then therefore my quality of questions, my curiosity for me to reach what shaped that thinking, what shaped that limiting beliefs, what is the origin of this value that you currently or that she currently brings. Therefore, then I become open and curious, just like empty container that then that person trusts me and then accessing through questions more and more, and that person gaining insights. Oh, aha. Now I can see why I that limiting beliefs that I have that I needed to learn more or that I wasn't good enough or that I was not prepared hold me back from stepping into my full power. So that is what I felt that sort of if we call it influence, but I gave my my energy for them to step into their greatness.
Mm. Yeah, I guess that's as well how you sort of help women navigate those situations where they feel like, I mean, not just women, but people in general, but obviously your focus on women, how they sort of view themselves, because a lot of it is to do with, like you said, self-image and those limiting beliefs. Like you can have a certain self-image, you can portray yourself to feel disempowered, disenfranchised, but you sometimes, like you said, you need a partnership, you need a coach that's going to bring the best out of you and make you realize like you've got so much to give. And I feel like that's kind of one of the things that when it comes to women empowerment that we're seeing a lot more nowadays of there being sort of support networks, partnerships,
Mm.
collaborations of different people helping one another thrive and prosper in society. Um, it's really, I think it's really important that you mentioned that. And when we speak about sort of women of color, women of different backgrounds, they definitely, one of the key things I can definitely attest to is that they often face unique challenges, different challenges to people that you know are from more privileged backgrounds, for example. So, can you share some of those strategies that you use to sort of, you kind of mentioned you kind of you make them step into their greatness. But what other strategies do you use to help them overcome those barriers?
Yes, look, I like them to view themselves as if they didn't perceive that obstacle.
Mm,
That is a good way to start. If you did not have this obstacle of feeling that you're not privileged enough, or that you're, if you were not poor enough, or whatever they perceive, because I come from a middle class family, and Venezuela, even though in the 60s and 70s started to progress, in the 70s was considered the best country in Latin America to go and live, with a lot of wealth and prosperity through the oil reserves that the country has. But I was not from a wealthy family, and I think then I believe that migrants, for example, here in Australia, they do very well because they come from these impoverished countries, and they see the opportunity. And this is what it is all about. What is the opportunity? Let's forget about the colors. Let's forget about the discrimination. If that's where to be put aside, or even consider that that's not the problem, what is it that you would like to create? So the first thing is to understand where they are at in their limiting beliefs, and also to uncover their emotional intelligence with clear data. So we're not guessing here. So they go through a survey of a program called the Emotional Capital Report, that brings a report with clear scores of where you are at in your self-knowing, or empathy, or adaptability, or relationship skills, or optimism, of empathy, of self-actualization, self-reliance. And therefore, then, if the report comes and shows, well, Adash, you are really struggling with adaptability, then with the scores, and then we have to view what could be the reason why. So, what I'm trying to say here is that until we view a report with clear data, that then you allow to recognize what could be the struggle, then as a coach, I could be floundering as well in terms of having a guesswork and going
mm,
sideways from left to right. But here we have data that allows us to go straight into what we both viewing through the report, that is the problem, and then
mm,
addressing it the way that you want to. So that is the first strategy that I offer. The other strategy is to understand the blueprints of their values. And you know very well, from being from a different cultural background, or having parents from a different cultural background to where you are now, that our parents, our caregivers influence our values in many ways. For example, my parents used to, of course, they value education and the importance of education, and that was always instilling me. But they say, for example, the value of loyalty and the value of shut up and put up from that generation, the value of hard work. And so, okay, if you are, I was a modern woman. My father was from the 1914, mother was from 1925. It's a totally different era.
Mm,
A modern woman and then coming to live in a first world country, you need to then um challenge those values from hard work to loyalty. Yes, loyalty is a great value when you are getting married before the priest saying that until death do us part. But when you are a recipient of abuse or domestic violence or whatever it is, then that value of loyalty doesn't serve you. You just have to
yeah.
fence for yourself and look for new avenues. You know what? So that's what I'm trying to say. These values, they need to be challenged because sometimes our parents' cultural background, it brings some unconscious bias and things that we don't understand. Why do I think this way? So uncovering values is important, as well as creating a new story, having formulating goals that can create a legacy, the legacy that you want to leave in the world, and so on. So that is one of the steps, and the program that I run has 6 steps, and it's quite exciting to see how it gradually transforms their beliefs, their actions, their self confidence, and the way they step up to face new challenges.
Mm. So it's really, so you essentially have sort of those one two of those main strategies is kind of taking a data sort of driven approach, psychological sort of data, understanding the person and maybe looking at where they need to sort of look at their in terms of their psyche and their personality and their profile, where areas they can improve. And then the second part is kind of, yeah, like you said, like values driven, understanding those values, whether they are good values, bad values, maybe values you can sort of change, implement in your day to day life. So yeah, I think those strategies do make a lot of sense, and I can definitely see how that definitely has an impact on not just the women you're coaching, but I guess if you're a coach of any kind, maybe this is something, if you're listening, you can definitely take on board in terms of your coaching methodology, I would say. Um, I wanted to touch on something that you're really passionate about, which is, and it's a big sort of focus on your work, which is helping women build a legacy, right? Um, what does building a legacy mean to you? And what does building a legacy in the context of coaching women mean?
Legacy means to me something that beyond my existence, then people will remember who I was or what I meant to them. Because I was reading or listening to an interview with this neuroscience, and when we are driven by purpose, there is some m- more inner gratification. Our brain produces the right hormones that help us pair bond with partners or friends or all of these, rather than when we are driven by material possessions. And we have heard these stories and we see it in the social media continuously of artists or famous people that they are not fulfilled, and they talk
Yeah.
about their lack of fulfillment even though they have no financial difficulties. However, people that had faced challenges of prison or been challenged in their health, or they had lost um, a limb, or they've been challenged because they lost an organ. And you suddenly see them thriving and with this filled with determination because they want to create a legacy. And that is what it means. So I have a step called eli- goals, and it comes from the word events or experiences, then learnings, legacy, intentions, and clarity. And so what it comes is with, instead of SMART goals, I invite you to establish goals of things that you want or events that you want to create. For example, so if I were to ask you, what was the origin for you to create a podcast? And then you might say, okay, yes, look, I look for sponsors, or but really that wasn't the the end
The event
goal.
that happened, yeah.
So you wanted to connect with people internationally. You wanted to be of service. You wanted to learn more, not only about yourself, but also about other people. So we go, and by going higher and higher and higher in the level of existence, what was the top level that it helped you or excited you in order to create this podcast. And that is your legacy. For that, then it comes, okay, I want to create this. I want to have this experience or this event in my life. But then you have to assess, what do I need to learn to do this podcast? If I do I have to learn communication skills, listening skills? Do I have to learn how to interview people and ask them better quality questions? Do I need to learn about technology and so on? So you go through. If I were to be and embody the sense to be the greatest podcaster in the world, what do I need to learn? And so you go through that, and then what legacy would that create? And then you imagined, right? For if I were to ask you, what do you imagine your podcast will create? And what would you tell me?
I feel like I'm experiencing some live coaching here.
No,
Um,
no, please.
yeah, no, it's like I'm really like it's really, really like it's really interesting. If I had to say the legacy I want to build with my podcast, um, I want my podcast and the legacy to have inspired people to be themselves, be their authentic selves, and drive the change that they want to see in society, and not be kind of what you mentioned earlier about the values of kind of like shut up and take it, for example. Be vocal about the things you want to see happen in the world. Um, and this is why my platform is like that. I want to be able to change the way that we view people from different backgrounds. That's my overall legacy. I don't know if that's the right answer. Maybe I'm still figuring out what I want my
That's
legacy to be,
fine.
but
And that's fine. The
yeah.
same happens when, these women come in terms of establishing the legacy. And you know why? Because in the beginning, Adash, we don't have all the answers.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the answers come as your podcast grows, as your listeners also increase, as your guests offer different points of view. And the same is in terms of creating the legacy. So for me, the way that our legacy for me means to create something that beyond my existence I will be remembered and that will leave a contribution, because for me, purpose is what drives me more than money. Of course, we have to be congruent in terms of our financial reward and getting paid for what we do, and not feel that, oh, I'm very afraid to ask people for money. No, you have to embody that within your heart, because it's not a charity when you run, and therefore teaching or helping women to have this realization is amazing. And what legacy they want to build, it's up to them. I cannot influence. But for me, for example, um, yeah, will be interesting to work more and more with people and women that want to work in sustainable legacy, because now we are faced with climate change, and it will be great to work with people that want to view women that want to work with recycling materials, and that will help less waste. But that is not for me to choose. I could narrow more even my niche. However, I'm just broad in terms of working with women that face the challenges of contract work by having unstable lives because of the laws have changed, and now it's very difficult to find a permanent job. And so I say, reclaim your vision to write your story, bring your aspirations to life while you're working full time. When are you going to do it? If it's not now, when? If it's not you,
Mm.
who?
It's really hard to sort of, because I can sympathize with a lot of those women. It's really hard to sort of manage your dreams and aspirations. Not manage, I don't know if manage is the right word, but go for your dreams and aspirations whilst you still need to sort of
Maybe balance.
kind of,
Maybe
yeah, the
balance.
balance, like not surviving is as well, but like just living day to day. So, and in some cases it might be surviving because financially it is tough for a lot of people out there.
I've been
But a
through
lot of
that.
people do have dreams. Yeah, it's so tough.
I've been through that myself. And I'm actually today's video in the LinkedIn, and is going also into my YouTube channel. It talks about this. It talks about,
Mhm.
the sometimes, because this is what you have to do. It feels like you're surviving rather than thriving. But when you actually then get in touch, even through the day-to-day job, but there is a little glimpse of excitement because of what you want to create, what you want to accomplish, then it's like falling in love, right? When you fall
Yeah,
in
yeah.
love, you feel this energy, this spring in your step. And I love when we fall in love with our own selves, with our own vision. This is the moment that I think like you gain your wings to fly, my friend.
Is that what you say is the most rewarding thing of being a coach, of a new life coach, and like
Yeah,
seeing that you can, because obviously you have that impact on women, right? But it's up to them as well to
good.
sort of take what you coach them and to see them absolutely transform their lives. Is that like the biggest? Would you say that's the biggest reward of your
It,
work?
it, it has to be. It's like when you become a parent, right? And you will be a parent one day, hopefully. And
I hope so too.
well, maybe, maybe no, but even a pet parent, right? And then, therefore, when you see your friends achieving, when you see your parents possibly achieving something that they thought they were not able, you feel your heart opens the same, because it is a perception projection here between the relationship between client and coach. So I give myself, and I've told you before that I empty the container and I open my heart to receive what you're telling me. But I have to make a promise to you at at the initial stages of the relationship, and I have to ask your permission. If there is something that I need to challenge and say time out, would you be okay with that? And then, we I have to be firm,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
It's not
Yeah.
really about agreeing with you, it's about challenging you. So, yes, it is a wonderful feeling when you see them transforming their vision and feeling in love with themselves, because there is nothing more sexy than a woman that backs herself up, that feels in love with life rather than waiting to be fixed or rescued by something or someone.
It's taking ownership of the journey and like being able to stand on your own 2 feet and do the things that you really wanna do, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of what your coaching is. I've yeah, I've already felt like I've experienced your coaching today on today's podcast. But I feel like it's amazing now that I can see like the rewards that you personally feel, but also that those women that you're coaching are, because they know that they're getting challenged for the right reasons. It's not like they're getting challenged and like, oh no, maybe I don't know. Maybe initially, do some women feel like that they're not comfortable with the challenge? Is that something that they again have to overcome?
Well, again, we set clear agreements in the beginning,
Yeah,
and that's part of it. If you take the challenge, is because you agree to the terms and conditions of the relationship. And if there is something that I say, then you challenge me, and that's totally okay. And therefore, I keep reminding you. And if it's not for us to discover, and that's why we spend time before we enter into the formal relationship, we spend time discussing and talking to each other. And I know that I offer a discovery call that you might want to ask me a little bit more about
yeah,
it. But yes, we spend time before entering into this formal relationship of coachee, coachee, a client, to uncover what is the do's and the don'ts.
yeah. So that's kind of one of the things that you kind of we'll get onto the discovery call when we sort of share with people where they can get in touch with you, because I do think that's a really important thing that you do. Um, we are sort of approaching the end of the podcast, and there are a couple of other questions I would love to ask you. But one of the biggest questions that I want to sort of to touch on is, in order to improve diversity, like what do you think is the biggest, not just diversity, but empowerment of women? What do you think is the biggest challenge that we still face? And what do you think is the thing that we're currently doing that we need to continue doing in order to make sure we're empowering women, as much women as we can?
Yes, the biggest obstacle for the empowerment of women or diversity is self-imposed by our own beliefs of what
Yeah.
can the societal expectations, cultural expectations, and yes, so I think, for example, I will find it difficult to coach someone, say, from a cultural background that I don't know anything about it, that maybe they don't speak English properly, because then there will be a barrier of communication. But I think the biggest obstacle in terms of diversity and empowering women from different cultural backgrounds is the self-imposed um, issues they see and they find. But if you live in a first world nation like Australia, the UK, Canada, USA, and other countries, they have a lot of opportunities. Then, if you don't come from a cultural background where your parents are to arrange your marriage and they can arrange marriage. Recently, it's been in the news, a father that's been jailed for arranging the marriage of his daughter and son, even when they were
Okay.
young teenagers. They escaped. I mean, that is totally unlawful here in this country.
Yeah.
So therefore, we had to challenge that, how we view ourselves. Like, I couldn't view myself with the challenge that I was a Latina woman. I was divorcee. I had two children of my own. Then my second marriage didn't go according to plans. I could have seen all these obstacles and the poor me kind of mindset. But I challenged that, and I based myself and challenged myself completely and fully and trusted on the unknown. When you trust the unknown and you step up, then the portal opens, Adash. I can assure you of
Mm.
that, regardless.
No, that definitely does. That's so true, because it's about that. because I think a lot of people, whether it's from any sort of discrimination, right? If it's gender, ethnicity, race, sexuality, a lot. Of course, there is the societal systemic issues that systems aren't fit to make people feel comfortable or make people have the same opportunities as others. Completely agree. But there is also that self-imposed thing, which I feel like we've touched on a lot in this episode. Um, that we kind of need to sort of challenge that notion a lot more and kind of, yeah, one of the quotes that I'm definitely going to take away from today's episode is step into your greatness, because that is the thing that I feel like a lot of people from backgrounds that are underrepresented need to sort of feel that they can do that and have the confidence that they do. And it's important to have coaches like yourself, Maria, that are, instilling that belief in them.
Yeah.
So that is an important sort of message I want to sort of re-emphasize.
I'm glad that you're having that insight about stepping into your greatness. 'Cause,
Mm. Yeah, and that's 100%. That's something I'm definitely going to be continuing to do. Actually, that question I didn't mention it. That question is from our last guest, who was Alistair Lobo on the Ethnically podcast. I should have given you a bit of an introduction that we do this segment in the episode where you get a question from the previous guest, and that was from
oh,
Alistair.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a nice little question.
Yes. Yeah.
It's also your chance to ask a question, and then I do have a final question for you at the end, but I'll
Oh my
save that.
goodness. Oh, what would
Yeah.
I ask?
So, along the themes of ethnically, one of the things I love to do is get to know people, their backgrounds, their industry, the challenges in their industry, how they can bring about more change, empower people from different backgrounds to step into their greatness. So, maybe what question would you like to provide for my next guest of the Ethnically podcast?
Well, when have you faced at a ethnical or diversity challenge in what you are in your current present life in this life where you are, um and what did you do about it?
Do you mean challenges in like an experience or situation?
Yes.
Okay.
For example, I recently spoke to a transgender person, and
Mhm.
this was a man that he was married and had a child. And one day he woke up and said, "I can't do this anymore as a man." And he came out and went through all the process. Oh my God,
Yeah.
I could not imagine what he suffered. The
Yeah.
issues that was like amazing. And now he faces, well, she has the body of a woman, um, the voice of a man,
Mhm.
but the discrimination, the challenges, even from women. And we're not talking here about competing in sports like tennis or swimming or golf or boxing or anything where the male body build of that human being will influence the outcome of the sport results. We're talking about a person that uncovered her sexuality and how she actually felt that her changes will bring empowerment to many other human beings that are going through this. And it's so many we don't see because we're in the cushy place of our home and our jobs. And I don't work in that area. However, it was very interesting to understand fully the conversation with this human being and facing the systemic and racial abuse, even from women.
Yeah.
So then my question to the next guest is, have you faced some systemic or ethnical challenges? And what did you do about it? Would that be
Yeah.
okay?
That's more than okay. I think that's a brilliant question. Yeah, I think that'll be amazing to hear because it's a really, as well as a really deep question as well. It'd be good to sort of sense whether that question hits someone in a different way, and makes them sort of open up about themselves and who they are and why they do what they do. Because again, another key theme I've taken from today's episode is that your pain is your purpose, and maybe it is one of the themes of my next episode with my next guest. Um,
Well, the thing
but
is,
for
as your
yeah,
I'm sorry to say this, but as your
no, that's fine.
podcast grows, then like I am much older than you, and I'm not sure if you have, all of your guests have been. You had a Venezuelan woman recently as well, and some other guest. But you'll come and bring different perspectives, as
Perspectives.
well
Yeah,
as people through with different sexual orientation or challenges, and that will teach you this more about what human beings suffer or experience, because there is one thing in common. We all want to be accepted and loved, regardless of your social background, ethnical background, or sexual orientation. We all want to belong, to feel safe, to feel loved, accepted. And
yeah.
that is something that makes us human. Even animals, dogs, other species.
They want to feel that feeling of belonging
Yes.
and acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel, yeah, that is so true because it's feeling belonged, feeling accepted, but being accepted for who you are and what you stand for. I feel like that's definitely like yeah, it's still a challenge today, today's world. Is as it's what you kind of mentioned, like people are still figuring out their purpose, still figuring out how they can belong in society, why they feel uncomfortable in their body, in their own body, and there's so many different reasons for that. And so I feel like your question will be a good question to ask my next guest to kind of touch on those themes. Um, before we go, I wanted to ask, what does the future lie for your coaching?
For my coaching or for the
Yeah.
coaching industry?
For your coaching in general, like what does like I said, we started the podcast talking about the end of 2024.
Yes.
Now moving into 5 in the next few
Well,
years, what does the future of
did I
New Life coaching look?
did I tell you that I have a vision? The vision for that I have set myself is to help 1 million women by 2030. That is in 6 years or less now. And so that can only happen through the ripple effects of consciousness that you and I are creating and expanding this wave across oceans. And whoever listens to this and gets an insight that touches their heart, propels into action, that is the wave of consciousness that we will need to reach 1 million people through all these waves of action, cause and effect. So that is the New Life Coach big vision for the coaching. Well, keep growing, keep progressing, keep establishing myself as a thought leader. And there are many coaches because it's an unregulated industry. So to make emphasis in your professional development as a coach is important, and to keep being ethical, authentic. I wouldn't call it vulnerable, but also to challenge myself in positive ways is also the on the cards. The being an authority in and of helping women. I would love the mission is to be recognized as a self development business of choice for many women that work in contract roles, and to see that I have paved the way for them to see their own possibilities in their lives. So
Mm.
there will be many more, but for the near future is to do more presentations online or face to face, to challenge myself, because I do have my own challenges. For example, I dislike face to face events.
Really?
Well, yes, I find it challenging. I can feel a lot of overwhelm. Maybe
Overwhelming, yeah.
maybe I'm growing older, but I find it, the noise and the many voices, and I have, hearing issues now, and so I this is perfect for me, but obviously I
Mm.
like very small gatherings and intimate gatherings rather than big events, and that's going to challenge me next year and the year ahead.
No, definitely. But I feel like it's important that you kind of recognize those challenges, right? Like you know that they're going to be challenges, but it's about how you adapt to that, how you prosper through that as well. And on your mission to help 1 million women feel empowered, we will make that happen. I'm pretty sure we will. But it's amazing to hear your ambition, your drive, and your entrepreneurialism, your inspiration. Maria, has been an absolute honor having you on the Ethnically podcast. I'll make sure to put where you can get in contact with Maria and to discover her on in the description below. If you want to get a discovery call or booking call with Maria, I'll make put all the information in the description below. But like I said, Maria, thank you so much for your time and for embarking a lot of wisdom on today's listeners. And for everyone listening, thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.